sitting around yesterday and thinking about the current state of the Chicago Bulls and where the Bulls could be headed, I had a thought in my mind of like, what is Billy Donovan's defining coaching style? Does Billy Donovan even have a defined coaching style? And is that something that's hurting the Chicago Bulls, or could that help the Chicago Bulls as they're looking to kind of change the dynamic of their roster and switch from winning to development? So I want to talk a little bit about that today. I also want to talk about the Chicago Bulls. No Chicago Bulls showing up in All-Star voting, which is a little bit shocking considering the season that Zach LaVine's having and Nikola Vucevic to a degree, but also not shocking at the same time. And I want to talk about the Chicago Bulls a guard rotation and why it's important that Billy Donovan find a balance between the guards that he has on this roster to get the best out of it. We're going to talk about all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host, Derek Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into it for today. And I'm not going to lie, this first conversation I want to talk about, as I alluded to in the intro, is Billy Donovan and his coaching style, right? And, this was kind of started up a little bit by Billy Donovan's recent comments in regards to the development of Modest Bucilis and how he has to kind of make the decision between trying to win games and putting Modest out there for development. And it started getting me thinking in general on like Billy Donovan's coaching, right? And you guys know I'm not a Billy Donovan guy by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not a Billy Donovan fan, right? Now, I do acknowledge as well that Billy Donovan isn't as bad as some Bulls fans make him out to be, but just because he's not, that doesn't mean that it still doesn't mean he's the right coach for this team. I've always said that, right? And as the roster has kind of changed for the Chicago Bulls since what it was when he initially got here to now, one could point out that like, okay, what is Billy Donovan doing out here? And you can't say that the Bulls have played the same, right? They haven't, right? We had a team that was a top 10 defensive team, I think the first, 2-3 years that Billy Donovan was here, despite not necessarily having the best defensive personnel. Now, our offense was trash, right? It was a lack of creativity with the offense. And now this style of offense has really changed from, what it was as far as pounding it out in the half court to now being a more up-tempo team. We're taking more threes. Those type of things are happening with this team. And, it goes to show that like Billy Donovan is adaptable to what he does, but Billy really lacks a true coaching style, right? And when you look at coaches, especially as you're going through a transition in your franchise, you do want coaches who are able to change and adapt a system to what their players, their roster construction is, but you also want to have a coach that still kind of has a defining style. Like I always look at Greg Popovich. I know that's a big comparison to go to. He's one of the greatest coaches in NBA history. But when you look at how that team played, right, from initially having David Robinson and Tim Duncan to eventually going from that to Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, and even in that team changed over its 11-year run. It changed its style as well. Now they were still a very good half court a team where they still relied a lot on the fundamentals of basketball, but their pace changed a little bit at times. There was a period in time where it went from working more inside with Tim Duncan, of course, to they moved to a quicker pace, still not a fast pace, especially not by modern day standards, where they started relying more on guard play, right? And Tim Duncan was still a very big part of that. But they had more wing play and guard play and things like that to now what they are now. And I know Greg Popovich has been out with this health thing. Shout out to Greg Popovich. Speedy recovery, my boy. Let's get back out there. But then you look at how they've played now with Wemby. There is a change in the system. Greg Popovich has probably changed his coaching style as far as the system that they run. Well, he's changed the system that they run probably 4 or 5 times over his 2-decade run with the San Antonio Spurs. Right, but that's one of the things that have kept the team relevant. That's one of the things that have kept him being able to relate to the modern day NBA players. How many coaches just since Greg Popovich took over the Spurs till now. How many coaches that we see have fizzled out of the NBA because they just don't know how to relate to modern day basketball? Scott Skiles is one of those guys, right? He fizzled out. Even Phil Jackson, one people who would look at one of Greg Popovich's contemporaries, he just eventually lost the ability to really relate with modern day players, and that's one thing that his impact became a little bit less. And so you look at players like that, Eric Spoelstra, even in his time with the Miami Heat, you look at the system that they ran with, of course, you have three Hall of Famers in Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh and LeBron James. Of course, you're going to play a little bit different, but look at the phases even over the last 8 years now, how that team has changed its style of play, right? And Billy Donovan is still a coach that when you look at the Bulls' style, you can say that they're taking more threes. You can say that they're moving a quicker pace, but there's no real coaching style or philosophy, right? It's not even that. I mean, one, if you're going to look at anyone, it's that Billy Donovan relies on his stars a lot and veterans a lot. Is that really a style, though, or is that more of a crutch, right? And this isn't to be all damning to Billy Donovan. It's just to talk about the realities of it. And then let's get in some numbers in this, right? If you take out Billy Donovan's first year here in Chicago, which we all knew that was a evaluation year where we won 31 games. If you go all the way back to the 2018-19 season, Billy Donovan's record has gotten worse every year since then. You look at 2018-19, he won 49 games with that Thunder team, down to 44. He then came to Chicago, he won 31. We're going to take that out as the anomaly right there, right? Then, because, changed, it was evaluation, they then changed gears. Zach LaVine missed the last 2 weeks of the season with COVID, so it is what it is there. Then you look at the next season in Chicago, 46 wins, right? Then down to 40 wins. Now down to 30 and 39 wins last season. And now we're on pace to win 36 to 37 games, taking another year of the record going down, right? Now, a record isn't necessarily indicative of a coaching style. I will say that it's indicative of a standard, right? But rosters change, players change, things like that. Let's then go and turn around and look at the pace of the Chicago Bulls, right? Even with the pace changing for the Bulls over Billy Donovan's time here has been wildly all over the place as far as pace. You look at the initial year that Billy Donovan came here, a 99 pace. We had a younger team that first year. For the majority of that year, then we started making moves. Went down to 98.3, 98.4, 96.2, and then up to this year, 104.5. And in that time period, the Bulls are actually averaging more points per game right now than they have under any year of Billy Donovan's tenure at 117.2 points per game. The most points. But unfortunately, our defense is also the worst under Billy Donovan, right? And so I look at it this way. As the Bulls move forward into a direction, can you have a direction without a true coaching style, right? And the thing that kind of is the most escalated by the situation with Billy Donovan, at least per me, right? And I'll look at it. Go and look at how many times the Chicago Bulls run a pick and roll and run it well. Go and look at how many times the Bulls inbound the ball after a timeout and that play is successful. Go and look at how the Chicago Bulls score in half courts against defenses. Go and look at the Bulls' record against teams above 500 over the course of their tenure here with Billy Donovan. I'm telling you right now, you go look at all those numbers, you're going to ask yourself, why the hell is Billy Donovan still the coach here? And that's one of the questions, right? And this isn't to damn Billy Donovan, but it is to ask the simple question. If the Bulls are going to shift more towards development, which still is a question, I think that's fair to say, if the Bulls don't move Zach and or Vooch between now and the start of next season, you got to question yourself, all right, are we actually focused on development, or are we trying to develop as we compete? So that's of course a question there. But what is Billy Donovan's style, right? And at one point, people try to say that Billy Donovan is this really good developing coach. I think that reputation comes over from college. I know he worked with Shea initially, 1 year, with Shea. He had a year of Lou Dort as well, right? But Lou Dort really became who he became after Billy Donovan, more so under Coach Dangle than under Billy Donovan. You look at the time here. Coby White has developed some, but again, how much of that is Kobe's work? Ayo's definitely developed. You can't take that away from the team. So it's just, again, you want alignment in your vision. You want alignment in the execution, and you want alignment with your roster. That's truly how you can have a direction, right? And right now, when you look at what the front office is telling us, right, as far as they said this is not the final version of the roster. They were trying. This season was built around trying to find out how many players on this roster will be part of the final version. But then to do that, you're not really developing or relying on your guys when you still see people like THT, when THT is playing bad, playing. It's different when Modest is maybe missing defensive assignments and THT comes in there and he's balling. Okay, cool, right? That's the thing. But we're still seeing THT play in some crunch time over Modest when THT is also playing like a 12-pack of cheeks, right? Torrey Craig, it is what it is. Torrey Craig had a hot couple of games. I'm not mad at it, but still, you got to ask your questions there, right? And these are also players that we clearly know are not part of the Bulls' future. Torrey Craig is probably not going to be here next year, right? And I get there's an aspect of wanting to play those players so that if you do eventually need to shop them, hopefully you will, you can get something back. But it's still this thing where you look at Billy Donovan, and to me, I have to ask the question on either direction that the Bulls go in. If you want to go compete, do you think you have the roster that Billy Donovan needs to compete, considering when he had 3 All-Stars, he couldn't necessarily do that? Again, not all on him, but okay, right? If the direction that you want to go is development, has Billy Donovan shown you enough development-wise on the floor? Because we could talk about Peter Patton all day. Peter Patton is having a huge impact on these players in their development, but then again, Peter Patton isn't coaching the games. So all Peter Patton can do is to say, hey, this is what I noticed in the minutes that you played, but guess what? Even his data is going to be a little bit lessened if they're not actually playing in important moments, right? So is Billy Donovan the guy, or are you just basically saying, hey, Peter Patton, your development team, that's where we're expecting most of the development to come from? So it's just this thing again with the love of Billy Donovan that the ownership group and the front office has. I just wonder if it's limiting what this team can do, right? And maybe that's why we also see part of the lack of action from the front office, because maybe they have in their minds like, all right, well, shit, if we're going to go this route, is Billy Donovan going to use him, right? Like, I mean, it's a fair question to ask, but I present the data. Guys, let me know how you feel about it down below, and we'll continue to talk about it. Moving on from that, I do want to talk about the Chicago Bulls guard rotation. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this guard rotation is that I do feel that with all the guards that we have on this team, right? And in the guard rotation, I'm not including Zach LaVine. And the reason why I'm not is mainly because Zach LaVine has played little to no guard this season at all. Zach LaVine has, I can get the exact numbers up for you. When you look at the minute split, it's actually pretty surprising. Zach LaVine has played little to no guard minutes this year. It's all forward minutes, even more power forward than anything else. Right now, when you look at Zach LaVine this season for the Chicago Bulls, nearly 80% of his minutes have come either from the small forward or power forward position. And 65% of that has come from the small forward position. So he's playing less than 20% of his minutes out on guard. So I'm not going to include him in the guard rotation. We can have a conversation, should he be playing more guard? But then again, roster construction dictates kind of how you do that. But Zach LaVine is playing more forward now than he has at any point in his NBA career. The only other time that he played this much forward was the 2022-23 season, in which he didn't play that many games. That would have been the 2023-24 season. The 2022-23 season, where he played 53% of his minutes at small forward. So, that's what it just comes down to. So he's playing more forward now than ever before in his NBA career. But I just wanted to say that, because if anybody asks, well, Hayes, why don't you have Zach LaVine in the guard rotation? Because he's not playing guard for us right now. So when you look at it, of course, most of the Chicago Bulls guard minutes are being played by Josh Giddey, Coby White, Ayo Dosunmu, and Lonzo Ball. Now, Lonzo, I don't have breakdowns here of him with specific other backcourt mates because of the way that he played. He's only played 278 minutes this season, so I'm not really going to hold that, because who he plays with. Like, either way, just to get that out the way, Lonzo Ball in his 278 minutes played has the highest net rating of plus minus of plus 36, and he also has a overall net rating of plus almost 5 at 4.9. So Lonzo Ball really, and because he's played with Josh Giddey, he's played with Kobe, he's played with Ayo, he's really the Swiss Army knife in this lineup. But really, they all are. They all can play multiple positions. Josh Giddey, you really kind of just want him to be point guard, but regardless of that, in Coby White's and Josh Giddey's 536 minutes played together, they have a net plus minus of -7. A net rating, though, of +1. Their net rating has actually been trending up. Their plus minus is actually trending considerably up too. And that goes to Billy Donovan saying, and he said this before, that he really felt like before Giddey's ankle kind of flared up, that Kobe and Giddey were starting to figure it out together. The numbers do support that. When they're on the court, the Bulls have an assist percentage of almost 71%, which is really good. and also a 60% true shooting percentage, which is damn near excellent, right? And even when you look at the slump that Coby and Josh Giddey have had shooting at times, more so Coby than Giddey, the fact that they have that 68% true shooting percentage, that's really solid, right? And so as long as they keep playing better, they'll get there. You look at Josh Giddey and Ayo Dosunmu as a backcourt. They play 384 minutes together. They have a plus minus of -93, which is crazy. That's wild. And a net rating of -10.3. Coby and Ayo Dosunmu together have a plus minus of -9. I'm sorry, -991, and a net rating of -8 with a 102 pace when they're playing out there together. So what does that mean? Right now, our guard play has been a net negative, right? And whether that's between how they play together or just how they're utilized. I like to think it's more how they're utilized, right? I understand that there's some overlapping skill sets, but I think you can use that to your benefit, right? Coby White, we've seen it. I think there's enough now that we know Coby White as a jump shooter just ain't it, right? At least not when you're relying on that to be the biggest part of his offensive game. He's better when he drives. That's just the realities of the situation, right? And so because of that, you like when we've seen for a large part of the season, Coby White being made a jump shooter when he's playing next to Josh Giddey or Ayo for that matter, it's not yielding the best result. It's not yielding the results that you want, right? Same thing with Josh Giddey. You don't want to while he started off the season on a heater from 3-point range, it's definitely fallen off. He's come back down to earth 3-point shooting wise, which is he's still shooting one of the best percentages of his career, right? It's just that you want Josh Giddey to take more open threes. And I think that's the thing, right, in this, is that we've been so perimeter based with our offense and with our guards. You want to use your guard. We don't have the type of guards that are just out there knockout shooting. Now, Ayo Dosunmu was getting closer and closer to the 40% shooter he was before. We got to see what he's going to be when he comes back from injury. That can definitely help, but it's still how you get those shots. And so you have 4 guards in Ayo, Lonzo, Coby White, and Josh Giddey that really take Ayo out. He's really the one that's really being more consistent with his shot lately. But you have these guys that aren't jump shooters who you're trying to make jump shooters. We've seen Lonzo Ball shoot the ball terribly as a jump shooter this year. And they're all kind of really solid creators. Now, Josh Giddey and Lonzo are the best creators as far as on-ball creators out of the group of 4, but they all can create in different ways. Ayo in transition is an amazing creator on ball. That's where his benefit is. Coby is more of a better creator. His assist percentage goes up. The team's assist percentage goes up. And the numbers off assists generated by Coby White are really good, right? So you need to use that. When you look at it, like I've said before, per game, Coby White's drives this season have been at 10.7. Over the last 5 games or so, he's averaging way more drives at almost 18. Off those drives, out of those 18 drives per game, we're scoring on 75% of the drives that Coby White has. That means that that's not just him scoring. That means that when he dishes an assist, and this is also on Coby because he does the weird thing when he drives, he torts his body weird, tries to do a pass, and it ends up turning into a turnover. We're seeing less of that lately. We need Coby that if he's going to drive, he needs to drive with the intent of watching and as a guard, monitoring where your players are and realizing, hey, when I get to this spot, I need to make this decision. I'm either going to pass it here or Dalen Terry or Zach LaVine are in a perfect position to drive, right? That's what you need to do. So when you're starting to see more of that, right, for Coby White as well, that's how you can use that. And also, that needs to be used with Josh Giddey as well. Josh Giddey, just because Coby White is driving to the lane, Giddey needs to find an angle and drive to the lane and be prepared to drive as well, because with Giddey's combination of size and that floater that he has, when he actually hits it, you can use that as well. So I would really like to see the way that this guard rotation start being utilized a little bit better is the creation and how you use them to create, right? And that has to be intentional in how you use your play calling. And right now the Bulls have not been that. So let's hope that that's going to be the case. Overall, it's just something to monitor. We have a really nice guard rotation. You look at the defensive abilities of Lonzo and Ayo, right? And that's not to say that that's all that they bring, right? Ayo's creation as far as driving, how he does finish around the rim now, and he's turning back into a solid 3-point shooter. You got Josh Giddey and his half-court creation, his creation in transition, how he can start the break. That's another good thing that all these guards have for the Chicago Bulls. They're all really good rebounders for their position. Every single one of them. That could be something that we can utilize, especially as a team that wants to move with a quicker pace. that is something that we could really utilize a little bit more than what we have been. And I really hope to see that from this Bulls team. I just want this Bulls team to operate. Again, that goes back to Billy Donovan and his coaching. You got to actually coach these guys. We do not have the type of team right now that can do read and react very well. You got to actually run, especially in the half-court system, and we'll see if the Bulls can get to doing it. All right, with that said, let's get to the last topic for today. The Bulls got shot out of All-Star voting so far. And while some Bulls fans I saw on social media, the reactions to that were shocked. I can see it in some places. You look at Zach LaVine, for example, right? They received less than 120,000 votes. It's just that they didn't show up in it. When you look at right now, the fact that he ranked, he got less votes than Cade Cunningham, Jordan Poole, Tyler Hero, Derek White. LaVine has better numbers than all those guys in field goal, three-point shooting, and true shooting percentage. Now, that's not all the end-all, be-all, right? But I do think when you look at the fact that Zach and Vooch, who Vooch is having a top 10 offensive season for a center, the fact that they didn't show up at all in voting. Now, front court's a little bit harder for Vooch because they're now lumping all front court players together, so it's not just centers. If it was, I think that he would probably get that. But I think it goes to show that nobody's checking for the Chicago Bulls. On top of the Bulls not having a lot of nationally televised games, and then even when we do, we get embarrassed, right? So I think that's a huge impact and part of all this as well. And the Bulls, listen, I would love to be able to say that, I was the one that at the beginning of the season, oh yeah, Vooch and Zach aren't going to get in. And some people were like, hey, we've seen players on bad teams get in before. And I'm like, yeah, but this is the Bulls we're talking about. We're like one of the laughing stocks of the National Basketball Association. So that kind of plays a part into that as well. But you guys can let me know how you feel down below. Let's get into one voicemail we got today. Because it's Shay, he's left like 4. And so when we get to mailbag day tomorrow, I don't want to play 4 Shay voicemails. But I need everybody to get voicemails in. We need more callers. We got the usual suspects, but we've grown considerably since the start of the season. I want to hear from some first-time callers. Get those voicemails in. 773-270-2799. I'm going to be highlighting first-time callers on tomorrow's mailbag, so get those voicemails in, people. Well, let's go ahead and play this one from Shay.
Yo, what's up, Hayes? This is Shay. I've been thinking about Zach LaVine getting traded, and we all had our little speculations between him and Vooch, and maybe they'll get traded off season. They won't get traded at all this season, but I've come up with a kind of, honestly, this is probably the best thought I'll probably think of. Maybe AK is hesitant to trade Zach LaVine due to the fact that he feels that he probably messed up on the Josh Giddey trade. And when I say messed up on the Josh Giddey trade is the fact that he didn't get no type of future draft capital or draft assets back. Just ask Kuso for Josh Giddey's trade, and I think he's kind of regretting that. So I think that with this Vooch or Zach LaVine trade, he want to get something that he could possibly use just in case, you know what I'm saying? And honestly, I think this is a pretty smart deal. I think it's pretty smart because you want to. Now, granted, I know I heard what you said in your previous videos. Oh, it's not going to be a perfect deal. Yes, but at least make this deal something that could hold you for the future. And I think that's what AK is thinking about. You know what I'm saying? He wants a future asset. Not necessarily a player, but like some kind of guaranteed draft capital where he could like find some security in this Zach LaVine trade or a Vooch trade, because let's face it, man, it wouldn't be the most smart of ideas to trade for a guy like Michael Porter Jr. or Zion Williamson, because you don't know if their body's going to hold up when it comes to injuries. So I think it's a good idea, try to get a first-round pick or multiple for Zach LaVine and try to get a first-round pick for Vooch, because let's face it, man, we really ain't got the time to be, messing around here, especially with us holding the San Antonio Spurs to pick. And on top of that, we need something that could, start the process, but doesn't necessarily put us back too far to the point where we're looking stupid and stuck in the middle of the pack, which we are right now. But that's just my thinking. You may feel something else. Anyway, tell me what you think. Peace.
I mean, I do think that AK to a degree is terrified to make a bad move, and it feels like it's palpable, right? You feel that from this front office that they want to make sure that they win the deal. Now that could absolutely be positive, right? That they're going into it wanting to make sure that they win the trade, and I think that the Bulls better damn well get a first round pick back in a Zach LaVine trade. I don't give a damn unless you're giving up a young player, and I mean like a young player like a Cam Thomas, you better damn well be giving up a first-round pick to be getting Zach LaVine. I don't give a shit about the narrative. Zach LaVine is one of the best scorers in the game of basketball. For almost a decade, there have only been 9 players in the NBA to score more points than Zach LaVine. That just is what it is. I get it that and listen, he's taking on way more defensive assignments this year as well. You better get a first-round pick if you move on from Zach LaVine. I'm not as worried about the player you get now. Like, I do think Michael Porter Jr. and a first-round pick, that's good. That's good. But especially when you look at where Zach LaVine's value has been talked about, you make sure you get at least a first-round pick back because that's the type of player that he is. But, hey, scared money don't make money at the same time. So you got AK and Eversley. They listen, you got to eventually make a move, right? And you don't want to make a bad move just to make a move, but eventually you got to pick a direction. And to pick a direction, that means moves have to come with it. And we'll see what they do. But Shay, thank you for that voicemail. Like I said, I want everybody to get in voicemail, especially any first-time callers. Be prioritizing y'all. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bull Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. BullCentralPod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.